Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn today. We're super excited to have Vanessa Zuber from Workability here with us today to talk about all the wonderful opportunities that they have going on. Vanessa, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, again, I'm Vanessa Zuber. I'm the statewide director of employment services. And I have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you guys. And yeah, so we'll just get to it here and share. There we go. Sometimes we have to get ourselves organized, I feel like, when we are doing these presentations. So, okay. All right, here we go. There's our little blurb. Okay, so we're going to be touching on a lot of moving parts because when I talk about what we do, we are a program. We're a program. Workability is not its own organization. We are part of a organization, but the focus of the program is employment, but it really encompasses a lot of other moving parts. And so that's why I wanted to add this section around, getting connected with services, but also just giving a quick little overview of the services that we provide as an agency. So we'll have a little piece like who we are and in addition to some tips and strategies. We have handouts. I provided a link so people can access some of the handouts regarding employment services for the Division of Development of Disabilities and also Rehabilitation Services of Arizona. And then we also have a resource page because let me tell you, there's just so much support out there. There's so much happening around the nation in regards to employment. And so hopefully that will help provide some more information and support for those that want to get into work or they want to know more about how to support people with disabilities into the workforce. Okay. What I like to tell people is, I like to show that we're a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization. We're a UCP of Southern Arizona. We are not affiliated with another UCP in the state of Arizona. There is a UCP Central, but we are not affiliated with them. We operate as our own entity. And we also provide a realm of other services that are not community-based. So we have something called attendant care, respite, habilitation, housekeeping. And all those typically happen in the home. Sometimes, like with respite or hab, you might see some of that happening in the community, but a lot of times it's happening in the home. And these services are for all ages. So from the time you're born until you pass, some people are getting all these services or have had one or two throughout their lives. We also have a DTA program, a day treatment adult program. It's a very small program, but it's called Days Without Walls. And that's providing people with an enhanced ratio, people who might have a hard time being in groups of people, or maybe they have some intense medical issues going on. And so they get more support in that enhanced ratio program. And then we have the workability program, which encompasses all things employment related. So that is going to include transition services, but also all the yummy stuff around, supporting people in how to look for jobs, how to apply for jobs, how to network. We call that job development, and then into retention services. That's where we're actually job coaching. So that's kind of the realm of the services that we provide. And we also provide services in multiple counties. So we have Pima County, Santa Cruz, and Yuma. So that's where we are right now. All right. So the big thing I want to give a shout out before we move to the next slide is October is a really cool month for different initiatives. So right now we are celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And so that's called NDEAM. You might see things being posted on social media about it, but it's really about promoting employment first initiatives. And that's the foundation that Workability was created on, was created around the belief that anyone can work, no matter how significant your disability is. If you want to work and you have the desire to work, then we're going to support you. We believe that anyone can, and we'll do our best to find matches. And there's a lot of other things that it covers and Employment First talks about in addition to that belief, but also everything is equitable. You know, people are receiving minimum wage or higher for their pay rate. They're given the same opportunities as other people with promotions and different kinds of positions. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But what I want to ask everybody is, why do you think work is important? And maybe we can pop some of those ideas in the chat. Why do you think work is an important aspect of being an adult? So these are things to think about. So we're going to watch a quick video about basically celebrating NDEAM, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Say that really fast many times. And it'll give a little bit more information to you, because everybody has different reasons, right? Like why they feel employment is important.
My name is Chris Desborough, and I choose to work because I can. Even though I am blind, I still have plenty of skills and great skills that means I am employable, and I choose, for me, for my family, and for my own dignity, to work. And that's why I champion employment first.
So Chris Desborough, he is the Community Outreach Director for the Office of Council Member Paul Cunningham. And a lot of times I think we all have these ideas about what we think people can and can't do. So it's really awesome when we can get a lot of different people on board to talk about their reasons for why they work, because it's not always about money. There's a lot of other reasons why work is an important aspect of being an adult. Okay, so this gives a little more information about employment first. The really cool thing is it is about thinking through being included. You know, it covers this idea that, you know, if we're talking about people being self-advocates, being self-determined, learning how to be their own people, then why can't work be one of the expected outcomes, right? Like, how come we wait so long to be talking about work or employment opportunities with youth, with our youth? And we'll get to that a little bit later about why that is important as well, like instilling that belief at a young age, just like any maybe of your other kids, or you know, you yourself, if you're somebody who's either on the spectrum or has a disability, it's like, oh yeah, you know, that is an expected part of becoming an adult. Everybody talks about it. We're prepping for it, right? And think about all the people that either go into day programs, or they are, you know, at home, or like they're not participating in those typical activities. when they could be. So we always want to encourage or think about that inclusive aspect of becoming a full adult. So anyways, this kind of all came about from, or the big push from the Work Innovation Opportunity Act. And, you know, I don't know if people have been hearing the term customized employment. That's been, you know, kicked around for many, many years. But they're really pushing that as a way to support people into competitive wage jobs or into more supportive work environments or work opportunities. So where they're making the same wage as everybody else, they're getting benefits, all these things that we typically experience, right? They're actually working with people without disabilities. So I don't know if you guys have heard the term sheltered work. So sheltered work programs means that we're basically lumping groups of people with disabilities into a job. And so they don't really get to work with other people, a more diverse population. So it isn't always about substandard wages, but maybe that's been linked in the past where people working in sheltered environments also are getting sub-minimum wages. So this is sort of like phasing out of that way of thinking. That's kind of an old way to think about things. And then, you know, advancement. So I don't know how much experience our audience has, but historically, there's been a lot of situations where people with disabilities get a job and they're expected to keep that job for like 30 years or for their entire adult life. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we've all had lots of jobs, you know. I mean, my first job was working at Pizza Hut. And I mean, I've had many jobs since then that led me to my actual career. So I think that's normal. And so just keeping in mind that diversification and all those different experiences are also deserving to the population that we typically work with, right? And just having the belief, you know, a lot of times thinking through, having an open mind, thinking creatively, thinking outside the box, you know, you have to have that belief that a person can work that may have some significant barriers. And think about what Chris mentioned. You know, he mentioned different reasons why, right? He talked about dignity. So everybody deserves the dignity of risk, right? I don't know if everybody's heard that term, but the dignity to make mistakes and have experiences and maybe make wrong choices, maybe have hard things that they have to work through. All of that is a form of dignity that we all have as humans as we transition into adulthood. So we'll just get into some of the types of services. Now that I talked a little bit about our philosophy and the way that we think about things, we have a hashtag that we use. It's called Putting Abilities to Work. So focusing on people's abilities rather than focusing so much on what they can't do, focusing more on what they can do. So one of those services that really promotes this idea is our pre-employment transition services. And we also have another transition service called Transition to Employment. And what's really cool is I feel like Rehabilitation Services of Arizona and our Division of Development of Disabilities groups, those are our funding sources. We really need to give a huge shout out to them because really it's because of the funding that comes through there and the coordination of those services for why we're able to do it, right? Why we as a provider, that's what we're called as a provider of these services, we have to get contracts and pass all the training and credentialing to provide these services. So thanks to them, you know, for providing that support to us and to all of us that get those services. But what about the people that don't get those services, or maybe They are in school and they're kind of in a weird area. They don't really have Medicaid all techs. They haven't really gotten into VR services. So how would this work, you know, for that part of the population? Maybe there's someone that has a learning disability. Maybe it's someone with ADHD. There's somebody with, you know, slight hearing impairments. They could, if they have that diagnosis written either in their 504 plan or in their IEP, they could actually get into pre-ETS, into pre-employment transition services. It is the gateway into voc rehab. So a lot of people don't realize that, but if you have a diagnosis, a documented diagnosis, you know, and if you're between the ages of 14 and 22 years of age, you can get into this service. So it's a great opportunity and it's free, and it can start, you could start doing it when you're in high school. You could start doing it when you're 14. Some people are middle school age. And all you have to do is talk to a transition specialist at your school and start having the dialogue. And then choosing a provider. So, and there's a lot of providers who do this service. So not just Workability, but a lot of providers. So you have a nice, you can shop around, and we'll talk about that, like some things you want to look for when you're looking for a provider. So why have transition services? I don't know, does anybody want to take a stab? We have a few people on the call, but does anybody want to chime in and say why transition services are useful?
It's confusing after you graduate high school. There's nothing left. Nobody has direction anymore.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. There's so much information, and especially if maybe, you know, and there could be different people in the audience, right? You could have people that have a disability and they want to know more about services. And so maybe you're already at a high school, but looking back, you know, it could have been helpful to have some of this information when you were younger, okay? For parents, it's like, oh, I could be taking, you know, advantage of this service and start planning ahead, because once a person graduates, that shifts, like the supports that maybe you had while your kiddo was in school, it really shifts, it really changes. The services look different. So why not start planning early so you have a better idea about where your kiddo could work or what skills they may have. Or maybe that makes you think about, oh, maybe I should have my kiddo do volunteer work or have a scheduled, you know, chores that I do in the house. Start learning like, oh, there's an expectation, I'm going to have to do things. You know, all those types of stuff. So yeah, our goal is to help people eventually find employment. You know, when people get into the service with us, we're already talking about work. What kinds of work do you think you might want to do? What are your interests? What are your likes and dislikes? What's your skill level? You know, what kinds of financial needs? Are you going to be living on your own? Are you still going to be living with the parents, but maybe paying rent? Are you going to be buying your own stuff? Those are the things to be thinking about, like any young person that's transitioning from high school into adulthood. The way to think of it is that VR is going to be more short-term services, meaning that the services are going to be quickly rendered, and where the Division of Developmental Disabilities services are going to be more long-term. And so you're going to see a more in-depth delivery of those services than maybe voc rehab. It'll be a little faster. And we get more into that later. All right. Any questions so far? How's this going? Is this working for everybody, what I'm talking about? All right. Some things to consider, and we won't spend too much time in transition, but I do like to talk about it. is that, we're moving. When we hear the word transition, that is a word that's telling you there's movement happening. So people are moving from one thing to another. That's kind of what transition means. It's not, oh, we're just gonna stop, or we're just gonna like do this and then not go anywhere. Like transition means movement. So in this case, the outcome is a job. All right. It's a job, and thinking, how do I keep my job? Or if I want a different job, I have the skills to maybe look for another job. Okay. I may still need support sometimes because it's a lot, but I got it in my mind, or the family has it in mind, that this individual is going to be moving from one point to another point, and it's always moving forward. It's progressing. It's not going backwards. So think of it that way. We're moving forward. We're not staying in the too long, we are moving and learning and growing. The other thing I think is interesting is when we think about transition, we only think about the person we're serving services, but it's also families, it's parents. I mean, it's overwhelming, all the things to think about. And so I always think that the transition piece it's everybody's going through it. It's a process. And there's no easiness around it. I mean, maybe there is somewhat, but there's always something, right, that to learn about or to think about, or planning involved, all those things. So parents, hang in there. Hang in there. It'll be okay. I'm a sibling. I have a brother who has autism. I understand some of the interesting things that happen in families, especially around the fear of the unknown or what could happen. I completely empathize with that. The other thing too is that there's a lot of trajectories. What I mean is there's a lot of pathways, or there's a lot of bridges that can go in multiple directions. So, somebody could start out in pre-ets. This is my dream trajectory. They start out in pre-ets when they're really young. Maybe they take it a couple times because, things change as you're aging. Then they have a plan. Maybe they decide to go to college. Maybe they go get a certification, or maybe they decide, oh, I'm going to go to PIMA, or I'm ready, man. I'm strong in science and I'm going to go to university. So just keep in mind that even if a person struggles in school, that doesn't mean they can't do college. I can tell you, my brother, who's in his 40s, he was told often when he was in high school that he would not be able to handle college. And he right now is in the midst of his bachelor's degree, and he's getting straight A's. He took calculus for the first time. He got a C, but he did it. And he is just feeling so accomplished, because he was told so many times that he wasn't going to be able to do it. And so you just never know. And we all change as we get older. So have an open mind. The other thing that could happen is people are transitioning not from high school, but maybe they've been in a sheltered work program. Maybe they've been working in non-integrated environments. So the only thing they know about work is that I work with other people like myself, and that's all they know. Or they, had very little expectations of them. So sometimes those things can be very overwhelming to individuals that are transitioning. It's helpful if we're starting transition when people are young. So having the conversations, what are you going to do after high school? What do you want to do when you grow up? And really encouraging learning about what money is, how money is earned. They don't have to necessarily know how to count money or but just understanding when I do tasks, I earn something. I have to earn these things. It's not just given to me my whole life. So I'm earning it. I know that I'm going to have to take care of myself by paying for things. So having those types of conversations early, teaching choice, decision-making, all the self-determination skills when they're young, when they're kids. This is in elementary, start pushing them to make choices for themselves, having boundaries around their bodies, having boundaries around what is okay and not okay, saying no, understanding all that. And then, you know, we just talked about this, just encouraging again that self-advocacy at a young age, understanding what their rights are, you know, understanding that they have a say in things, and that they have value. Let me ask you guys in the audience, how do you self-advocate?
I feel like with autism sometimes it feels different or is the struggle is different. Sometimes if you feel like you're self-advocating, people just think you're being mean, or then you just don't want to say anything, or then you don't know what the right word is.
Yes. Yeah, there's like this confusion that happens where we all really want people to be self-determined people, but then as people start advocating and practicing their self-determination, it can be hard for those around them. I mean, boundaries can be hard in general. When I think about ways in which I self-advocate for me, is I will explain like what is okay and not okay with my time, my personal time, or the work-life balance. And so in order for me to have good mental health, I have ADHD as well. So I have to really practice self-care, and I have to be the one that advocate for that. Like nobody else is going to take care of my ADHD. Like I have to take care of that. And so that's one of the ways I self-advocate is I advocate for downtime. Can anyone else share an example of how they advocate? It's a tough one. You know, we actually added it as one of our interview questions. When we interview new staff that want to join us, we start right off with in our interview, we want to know, how do you self-advocate? And it's funny, it's hard to answer it, because guess what? We all struggle with it. Not just people with disabilities, but humans, we struggle with self-advocacy. It's hard to ask for what we want. Anywho. Okay, so pre-employment, you know, transition services is a voc rehab service. So you must have an IEP and a 504 plan. So you have that proof that, you know, that you have a diagnosis of some sort, a disability, any kind of disability. The way that we do pre-eds is we work with high schools and we will deliver the service on campus. That's how we do it. So we go, if they have a session, like sometimes it's called life skills session, then they will allow us to come in and we provide the modules or the lessons that relate to the pre-eds curriculum. And it covers 5 different areas, which we'll get into. We like to collaborate with the teachers. And we also have varied levels of curriculum. We work with people that may need more support. So we have a foundation curriculum, a more mid-level curriculum for those that already maybe have some of the concepts down, because we want to try to meet people where they are. And then the other neat thing about it is the work-based learning piece of the modules, and that's where we work out partnerships with community members. It could be employers, it could be organizations, and we basically provide a opportunities. So somebody can actually try on a job and see what it feels like. And it does a couple things. It shows us what that person can do. And it shows us what maybe could be worked on, but it also shows the person, oh, I think I want to do this kind of work. Because a lot of times we don't know what we want to do until we start having experiences. So work-based learning provides those opportunities. It's kind of cool. I've always enjoyed that aspect of pre-eds. We use a lot of different teaching methods. Personally, I like social stories or scenarios. I think that works really well, but also peer-to-peer group activities, all those kinds of things. We typically have a minimum of 4 to 5 students and a maximum of 10 typically when we go to the high school. So they're not really big, and it just allows for better learning. We also can do one-to-one sessions. It's not just a group service. Sorry, I'm jumping all over. The different modules that we provide through pre-eds covers work readiness, self-advocacy, and post-secondary. And then we have job exploration, and then we do work-based learning. So those are the areas that get covered under pre-eds. They're short, they're not very long. Remember, VR is shorter. And it's almost like in a presentation mode, group activity mode. Have you guys heard of pre-eds before in this group? Let's see a show of hands if you guys have heard about pre-eds.
I never had.
Okay. All right. So if you want to do pre-eds, again, just let your transition specialist know at your school or your sped education teacher and say, hey, I want to know more about how to get involved with pre-employment transition services. And they can help you navigate that or figure that out with you. And if you feel like you're unsure, you can also contact Voc Rehab, and we'll have that contact in the list of resources. All right. So our other transition program is called Transition to Employment, and that's different than pre-eds. Because this is a service that's covered under the Division of Developmental Disabilities. So you have to have Medicaid and All-Techs. And also you have to meet the criteria. You have to meet the eligibility criteria. So under Voc Rehab, you can, any kind of disability is fine. But under DDD, you either have to have CP, autism, intellectual developmental disability, or epilepsy. So those are the headings, or you have to fit under there to get services. So Medicaid, All-Techs. The other thing about DDD is employment services can't start until they're 16. So like with Voc Rehab, they can start at 14. But with DDD, they can't start until they're 16 years of age. So that's the difference. And DDD provides longer term, right? So again, those different trajectories. Yeah. So our TTE service also has a curriculum. We start with a work readiness. It covers 17 topics. Typically it's about 20 weeks long. We do it in the fall, spring, and then we have a quick summer program. So we dive really deep into these topics, into the 17 topics, which could be, how do I do an application? How do I do a resume? How do I handle conflict? What is appropriate communication? We touch on, taking care of yourself, how to use transportation. There's a whole thing. It's pretty cool. It's very in-depth. wearing appropriate clothes, what's appropriate, hygiene, all those things. So the other thing is we practice a lot of inclusion where we want our members to start learning how to engage with a variety of either community members or employers, where they're the ones doing this, not the instructor, but the members themselves, the advocates. They're the ones that are initiating, doing informational interviews so they can learn about this job that, they're making a visit to. They're learning how to look up prices for when we do our entrepreneurship program, so they can think about, oh, do I want to have my own business? How do I do job exploration? And they're the ones sort of doing those activities. And then we have our internships. So we have a lot of internships that we've developed over the years with a variety of employers and organizations. In fact, we used to have an internship at the Autism Society. I don't know, Kate, I think maybe, I can't remember if we've done it since you've been, yeah, I believe we have. But it's great. It's a great, again, a great opportunity for people to practice. We like to use universal design in how we do our curriculums and how we do our instruction. So we like to make sure that our materials are adapted, meeting students where they are, and accommodating learners. And so it is sort of like this creative process, because each person brings their own set of things that they need. So we've learned a lot over the years. It's really helped us become better at adapting equipment and materials for people. Big thing is building relationships too. I think this really shows members how to do that, and it really gets them ready for the workplace. So it's not this big surprise or shock when they're like, oh, I got to actually talk to people. It kind of helps people work through that. We view TTE and pre-ETs as almost like a discovery process before they get into the workforce. So it's allowing us to understand who this person is, what their needs are, what they want to do, what does their life look like? And by us understanding that as job coaches or employment instructors, it also helps the people get clear about what they want to do. Let's see. So people can take this up to a year through the division. Sometimes we've been able to justify an additional year if the person is requiring more time. Where Voc Rehab, we typically deliver this literally in like 3 months. So it's very different pace between the two. Any questions about our transition services? Okay, so what do we do now? You've gone through the transition services. That doesn't mean that you're working. When you're doing a transition program or a transition service, again, that means you're learning, you're expanding your skill sets, you're practicing skills, but you're not working. You're not doing those things yet. So the next steps really is either initiating a Voc Rehab referral where you get referred to Voc Rehab, or you're looking into other types of pathways to employment. Or maybe you've decided, I want to take a class at PIMA. I want to go to school. A lot of people forget that that is a pathway for some of our members or our advocates. So, when you finish, a lot of times what we do as a program is we initiate a VR referral. If we and the team, meaning the support coordinator, the VR counselor, parents, friends, teachers, we all get together and are like, yay, so-and-so has really rocked it. They are ready to start applying for jobs, then we're like, let's initiate the VR referral process. And so a lot of times a conversation happens with the person's support coordinator. And that support coordinator will then get the paperwork in process to make the referral, okay? But let's say it didn't happen that way. Parents can also initiate voc rehab services. So you as the parent have, I want to say power, but you guys have the ability to advocate for the services that you want. The person, the member also has the power to initiate and ask for the services they want. So you don't have to be followers. You can take a leadership role in the services that you're looking for. I just want to say that. Because what I like to tell people, I'm not going to be working your job. You know, your support coordinator is not going to be working that job or living your life. You are going to be living your life. Okay. So you're the driver. You're the driver of your life. So yeah, it's really about prepping and readying yourself. You know, if you're ready to move on and get that job, then voc rehab is a natural direction to go, because voc rehab focuses on employment services and supports. The Division of Developmental Disabilities has services as well, and that is helpful for people that need long-term supports. So it's good to have both, and you can have both. Okay, hopefully that was clear.
Gwen had asked, how do your services operate along with VR? I think you might have answered it. If you had a more specific question, Gwen, let us know.
Yeah, so we're contracted. I'm sorry, Gwen, I can't tell you're gonna say. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get the unmute button.
No worries.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a little confused, like, can the benefits from voc rehab overlap with your services, or do your services stop once VR starts? My son has both DDD, Altex, and you know, Medicaid. He has it all, and I'm told, you know, by various people, he's very fortunate in that he has all these benefits. But then it seems like I get a lot of conflicting answers about, okay, if he's entitled to all these services, you know, I hear talk in meetings, especially from the DD case manager about, you know, if that service is provided by so-and-so, like voc rehab, then we're not going to pay for it, or we're not going to authorize it. So I just don't know if there's somebody I can talk to about the interaction between all these services, making sure my son is getting everything he's entitled to.
Sure. I think so I guess let's clarify this part, like our role as a provider. So we provide the service.
Right.
So as a provider, we currently have contracts to provide certain services through the Division of Developmental Disabilities and voc rehab. Okay. So there's a few services under voc rehab that we do not have the contract to provide. So that's a question you're going to want to ask providers when you're trying to find the right one to deliver the service, right?
Okay.
So like for us, we provide, and we'll get into this, actually this is moving into that area of what we're going to talk about, but we provide the job coaching and development service. We do an instructional service called RIS. We have our pre-ETS contract to do the pre-employment transition services. And then we also have supported education, which supports people as they are taking classes at like the university or the community college, or maybe they're going through some kind of certification process. So those are the services that we have, but there's a realm of services that VR can provide to people. And you know, Gwen, I'm so glad you are telling us this or asking us these questions, because that just reminded me, I need to pop in another resource for you guys. And what that resource is it breaks down the differences between DDD and RSA. Wouldn't that be helpful? So you kind of know, oh, these are all the things that DDD can do, and these are all the things that RSA can do.
That would be very helpful. Yeah. And would you mind please repeating? I think you gave 3 things that Workability is contracted to do, job coaching, supported education, but I think there was something in between the first. Job development. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you say those are things that you are contracted to do, if my son has VR, you could be the contractor to provide those things once his IPE is approved. Is it
right? Right. You could choose us. I mean, there's a whole group of providers,
right,
you know, in Pima County that can provide a realm of services. And there's people that will use multiple providers, because some providers maybe only have these 4 contracts. And this provider, you know, has these other contracts that they don't have for services. And we call them contracts because we actually have to apply to do it.
sure.
It's a service, really. So like, you know, some people may have a work adjustment training contract. We do not have that contract, but other providers may have that. And so you can ask your VR counselor, because their job is to coordinate your services, right? Their job is to make sure that you guys are having your needs met. So even with counselors, you guys want to advocate for what you want. And their job is to make sure it happens, and to check on the providers to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that we're following the contract of how we're supposed to provide that service. And I don't know if that clarifies.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And yeah, I think that chart or list would be very helpful too, because as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of acronyms that are, you know, and I get it, every industry has their own, but they come and go so fast, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a lot. It truly is a lot. That's why I like doing these presentations, because it really is. I mean, you know, of course, I don't feel like we are the end all be all provider. I mean, we're well known, but I feel like there's no, like, we all have to work, like all the providers, all the services, DDD and RSA services, they have to be braided. Everybody has to work together. This is a collaboration effort. So it's utilizing all of those sources, right? All those funding sources, but also it takes a village. I mean, there's no way one provider can meet the needs. So it's good to have a list. It's good for you guys to shop around for good providers. Yeah, like I said, you know, vocational rehabilitation has a lot of different ways or different services to help someone succeed. You know, like the supported education service is really underutilized. A lot of people don't realize that they can get help with navigating, you know, like their classes, their FAFSA, you know, if they want to apply for financial aid, if they need assistance and like coming up with a schedule to meet up with their department head, you know, for their degrees, or we'll actually connect with the department head as a job coach to make sure that we understand how and what the expectations are, so we can then support the person, the student that's going through college. Now, we're not meant to be a tutor. A lot of people think it means, oh, I'm going to get tutoring. No, that's not. We don't provide tutoring. We just provide the support as you're getting yourself through your classes, through your scheduling, through the books, checking in with you around like assistive technology needs. You know, if you're getting towards the end, how are you feeling about your finals? You know, we're kind of like the cheerleader, you know, of that experience. So a lot of people don't realize that is a service that can be provided, especially if the person has a very clear idea about what they want to do, you know, what they want to actually go study. So we have supported multiple people, and then they come back to us to help them find jobs in that industry. So it's pretty cool. You know, some people bypass voc rehab altogether. They just stay in the DDD services and they do something called group supported employment, which is a stepping stone. It's not meant to be a forever service, but it's a stepping stone where they do have a couple people or another person that they work with that has a disability, and they're actually doing a job. They're getting paid minimum wage, but they get full on support. And so that is another type of trajectory that people can do if they need that. But again, the goal is competitive integrated employment. So at some point they will move out of GSE services. And GSE is a DDD service, not a voc rehab service. So yeah. How do I sign up for voc rehab? Does that everybody here know what to do? Gwen, how did you get into VR? How did you get your?
Luckily, you know, he has a DD
Mhm.
support coordinator, and so she made a referral, and then the process kind of took off from there. You know, they scheduled the meetings, assign a counselor, et cetera, but because my son is DDD, it went through DDD with their authorization and referral, I guess you call it.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
think you can apply, can't you, on a website as well without going
Yeah.
through DDD?
You can, and the link is on my resource page, but I also added the referral form to the resource folder that's shared with you guys on the first or the second slide. So, and Kate, I don't know if you want to pop it in the chat box too, so people can look, but yeah, you can go on the VR, the DES website and find vocational rehabilitation services. And they have a video, they have all kinds of steps on how to apply. All the information is there. It's in English and Spanish. So that's cool. So, you know, you're applying for services, you're, you know, either you're going to be graduating soon, maybe you're already out of school, or maybe you're an adult and maybe, you know, you've been struggling to have jobs and then you get a late diagnosis. That happens actually more than people realize. A lot of people will receive late diagnoses. For something, or somebody has an accident and they become disabled. There's a lot of reasons why people get into services later in life rather than getting them when they're kids. But I'd like to talk about, you know, you get all these services, but like, it's like maintaining, you know, maintaining all these things, and how do I navigate all the things that I have to navigate? And I think self-determination, right, is a big part of this. Who knows what it is? What's self-determination? How would you describe it? Can anybody share? So self-determination, I think means a lot of different things, but having the drive to do things, having the drive and self-motivation to accomplish your goals or accomplish your dreams. And, a lot of that has to do with learning how to make goals for yourself and teaching people how to do that. Having a plan, making choices, taking risks, right? Because every time we make a choice, all of us are so used to making choices that we don't even think of it as, oh, I'm taking a risk right now because I could really make a poor choice. Or the choice I make could go in a direction that, oh, I didn't think of that, right? I mean, it happens. So supporting self-determination is really going to help people through when they're advocating for services, when they're making plans for what they want to do after high school or as an adult. Being motivated to learn about yourself, have an open mind, speak really openly about your disability. Don't be afraid. A disability is a small part of who we are. But it's an important part of who we are because having the full picture helps us have a better understanding of our needs. Having an understanding of how the services work, and asking these questions, how does it work? What does this mean? There's so many acronyms. So advocating, asking those questions, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to hold people accountable. And holding yourself accountable. So yes, going to the website, grabbing the VR referral form, contacting your support coordinator. Hey, I do feel like my son or daughter, or if you're the person that has a disability, hey, I really want to work. I have an interest. I'd like to contribute, even if it means part-time. It doesn't have to be this like full-time job, blue collar, white collar, any kind of job that you have an interest in, right? To get the ball rolling and to get some movement going is super helpful. So website is a great way to apply, but you can also make a phone call. And then resources, understanding what your rights are. So I put a handout in that folder of DDD has member right information, RSA has member rights. If you're not happy with a service, you can ask for something different. You can change providers. You can change your VR counselor. You can change your employment goal. You don't have to keep the same employment goal forever because maybe you learned, oh, I really do like inventory. I don't want to be at a grocery store. I really enjoy inventory. I'd rather get a job at a parts center. There's another great resource. It's called ONET, and that's it's O''NET. I think it's ONET online, and that's a great place to get access to like assessments and exploring different industries, labor markets. That's a great resource. Being familiar with the Disability Law Center. So some of the forms that are in that folder is from what used to be called the Arizona Center for Disability Law, but I think it's now called, Disability Rights Advocates, if they've changed their name, but we do have a disability law center. So it's good when you're trying to get into services to become familiar with them because they have a lot of great resources for people with disabilities and their family members. Understanding what SILCs are. So our Centers for Independent Living, we have one here, it's called Direct. Center for Independence, and they have a lot of information about accessibility, assistive technology, They also do self-advocacy training. And the Silks, it's a whole, like, they've been around for years. I mean, since the 70s. They were involved in making some of the laws change for people with disabilities. So they're kind of cool to connect with, and it just has great information. Another great resource is called PACER, PACER, and that's for parents. And it gets into a lot of different subjects that relate to transition or adults living, support for parents. It covers things like, you know, how to access certain resources. They're great. They have a lot of great information. And I think another thing is to get familiar with what ableism means. A lot of times we get into this field either as family members, or maybe we get hired in with an organization, and even people with disabilities. It's good to understand how discrimination exists. It's here and it exists, and also bias. It addresses bias. So looking at ableism is hugely helpful for all of us. And then learning about sexual health and healthy relationships at work. I can tell you that over the years, we've been doing Workability since 2014, and we've had multiple instances of people getting jobs, not really understanding that they can't hug people all the time. They shouldn't be stalking people for their phone numbers, touching people, because they were taught in high school that it's okay to hug and touch each other and be all, you know. So a lot of times they're not taught those boundaries. So when they get jobs, they're doing all these weird things that get misconstrued as harassment. So it's really important to start teaching kids at a young age about boundaries, and teaching them appropriate ways to be in the community. So learning about sexual health. What is okay for people to do with my body? What is my circle? Who is allowed in my internal circle and who's not? Who do I go to if I feel like I'm in danger? You know, all these things. How do I act at work? What is private work versus public? So I personally like Elevate Us. I think they do a great job. How many of you have heard of Elevate Us? You guys know what that is? I'm going to put it in here. Elevate Us. How many of you have heard of Catherine McLaughlin? Okay. What do you know about her? I'm going to put you on the spot, Kate.
I went to a talk by her talking about how to talk to parents of disabled individuals about their children's sexuality. And she was really great. She had really wonderful points to make and everything. So she's stuff.
Yeah, she is great. Huge, amazing resources. Sometimes when I use the chat box, I feel like I can't see what I'm typing. Does anybody else go through that? Like, because it's so tiny, it's not big. So I pardon if there's any misspellings, but Elevate Us, Catherine McLaughlin, Sexual Health and Healthy Relationships at Work. You guys will love it. As parents, it really gives really good tips. Some of her, if you sign up for her emails, she sends really great information, like excellent tips and strategies. And for those of you with disabilities, it's great information for you to learn more about, you know, like how you prefer to identify, what is gender, how to date. So it's really useful for everybody. I highly encourage you all to check it out. Okay, here we go. So strategies and tips, we're almost there. We're on slide 14, so we just have 5 more left. You guys are being so great. Strategies and tips. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think you should look for You know, when you're trying to look for a vendor, like a provider like us, what are some things that you want from that provider? You guys already know? Because I can tell you what'll happen is, sorry, Kate, were you gonna say something? Okay. Because a lot of times I think because we're so overwhelmed and bombarded by information, it would be easy to just go along with whatever our support coordinators or voc rehab counselors told us. Well, I think you should do this, but you really want to shop around. You know, you want to shop around and find a good provider that's going to think outside the box, especially if you have a significant barrier or a couple barriers to employment, or if you're a parent and you're advocating for your kiddo and it's kind of a group collaborative thing. You know, you're going to want to be thinking through, are they going to be able to meet my son or daughter where they are, right? Can they do that? So those are some things to think about. You may have to plan a little bit and get a list of the providers. So here's a couple things I would recommend you ask. You know, do they actually have relationships with employers? Can they tell you who did you place in the last 3 months? And see if they can answer that. You know, do they only place people at their agency? Because if they only place people at their agency, is that integrated? That's the question. It's not integrated if they're only placing people within their organization. That means they're only working with only their own people. It's not always a bad thing, but it limits the experiences. Do they know how to do customized employment? Do they provide a diverse set of services? Like some people you'll talk to and all they do is job development and job coaching. They don't do transition services. They don't do other types of employment services. And so you have to wonder why aren't you doing more? How long do people stay in their jobs after they get them placed? Do they stay? How long do they stay? And, you know, do they move them right in the progression of services? So those are some things to ask. Can we think of any other things people might want to ask or know about? Okay. Some other tips and strategies: encourage kiddos, but also for those that are getting back into the workforce or have worked before but haven't in a while. Volunteering is really huge because it gives you, it expands your skills and it supports you in engaging in the community. Participate and lead your own meetings. Again, you know, what I like to tell adults that are going to be working or that are looking into becoming more independent, it's really important that you self-advocate, that you are taking a leadership role in your IEPs, your PCSPs, your IPEs. So does everybody know what those all mean? We all know what an IEP. Oh, Gwen, go ahead. I see you.
Yeah, IEP, isn't that the individual employment plan? Or something like that? Persons, yeah. Did I mix that up with the IP? Oh, individual education plan. It's been too long. My son's out of school. Yeah, I'm sorry. Individual education plan and then
Yep.
I know the PCSP is for DDD. We meet every quarter to go
Mm.
over the person-centered support plan.
Yep, yep, yes, that's great. IPE is the individual plan of employment.
Employment, yeah.
Yeah,
I should have known that. Yeah.
that's okay. There's just a lot of meetings that we get pulled in.
Yeah.
If we're receiving services, from all three of these entities, you know, we have the Arizona education system, then we have our DDD system, and then we have our VR system. And so we have all these different plans and meetings that we need to attend. And it's not to say that if you are a parent that you can't chime in or be supportive, but it's really good for the person to run their own meeting or to at least be the person in charge, or at least chiming in about their services somehow or being included somehow. Again, it's just encouraging independence in that way. And then, you know, be thinking at a young age or throughout this experience, what is work and why is work important? You know, think about that. Why is it important? It's not just about earning a paycheck. It is, but there's more to it than that. Continue to work on self-advocacy skills. Really, we could all be doing this as humans. Continue to work on being able to ask for what you want, what you need, speaking up, making choices, making mistakes, being held accountable, having the dignity, all of that. Discuss your disability openly. Don't be afraid. Take pride in who you are. You know, you would be surprised at how many people around you, and this includes professionals, that are disabled. Okay, take pride. Explore strengths and abilities. Don't focus so much on what you can't do or what you see your children not being able to do. Focus on what they can do and how can that be generalized in tasks or chores or potential jobs. Supported decision-making, I would encourage this group to look at, in fact, I'm going to make a note. I'm going to add a document to our resource folder about this. But supported decision-making is a really cool way to think about becoming more independent and taking a leadership of your life. But it also relates to guardianship. And we live in a state that has one of the most restrictive guardianship laws in the country. So, you know, when somebody has full guardianship over you, you basically have no rights. Like all their rights have been stripped from them. So think about it a little bit more and learn about this, because there's different layers, there's different kinds of guardianship. And then there's also supported decision-making. So it's really cool. But I'll also pop a document in the folder so you guys can learn more about it. I've already talked about that, being accountable, utilize assistive technology, and that's our phones. Our phones, our cell phones are a form of assistive technology. Teaching people how to use their phones fully to make their own schedules, set up their own appointments, set up their own transportation, use it as a way to communicate. Cell phones are a great way to practice and utilize a resource that's right at your fingertips. And then explore fully your employment connections, or, you know, the providers in VR and DDD, they aren't the only ones that can find employment. You can too. And a lot of times, parents have more connections often than we do. And so you guys are strong in what you guys know and resources that you already have. All right. I have this here if people want to ask questions, but the next page is the resources that I was talking about. And then my information is on the very last page of this PowerPoint. But does anybody have comments or thoughts about what we've talked about? Or any feedback?
I just want to say, I think this has been very helpful and I appreciate you taking time to present.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking some great questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Does anybody else?
Did you say how we get the PowerPoint? You probably did and I missed it.
Yeah, I was telling Kate earlier what I was gonna do is pop the presentation mode into the Google Drive
Okay,
as a PDF, so that way it'll help you get better quality if you were gonna print it out or use it, or be able to grab those links.
sounds good. Thank you.
I'll be emailing all the attachments out with a link to the video too.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts? Let me look at the chat. So
Oh, good.
let's see. Jade, if you want to call me about, you can reach out to me.
I'll let her know.
Okay. I can't tell if she's in here yet.
She had to
All right. Okay. Well, again, I really appreciate being able to share information. And Kate, thank you so much for having all these great presentations and sessions available. And this is my contact info. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was such an incredible, amazing information. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. And I'll send out all those documents as soon as the video gets rendered and all the stuff. I'll send it with a clip for the video. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
afternoon.